Good afternoon, everybody. It's Lorraine Alternative Homesteading. It is Saturday, February 15th, 2025, and something just fell on the floor. Um, anyway, do you frequently feel like you're being watched? Well, I'm going to read from something that I located when I'm cleaning out my hard drive. It's 208 pages long. Obviously, I'm not going to read it all. It's called The Professional Paranoid by Michael Sweeney. It's a PDF. So do you frequently feel like you're being watched? Do you think you're sometimes being followed? Are there strange noises on the phone? Do objects at home or work disappear or show up in other places, suggesting that someone has been rummaging through your things? As a result, you're starting to look over your shoulder, check the rear view mirror more frequently, show more caution with strangers? Does this make you a loony or paranoid? Perhaps that what others are already calling you behind your back, or even suggest to your face that you might want to seek psychiatric help. Gee, they might be right. You must be crazy, huh? After all, if you perceive a threat, it's likely you act that way in the eyes of those around you. I don't know, guys. You know, the Manalapan, New Jersey police labeled me a threat. Maybe they're the ones that are paranoid and psychotic. Anyway, of course, I had to add that. After all, if you perceive a threat, it's likely that you act that way in the eyes of those around you. But it's a thin line between reality and paranoia, between someone who is truly paranoid and someone who's merely reacting properly to protect themselves. So don't take it too harshly when they use that nasty word against you. Instead, get some help. And here it is. To begin with, take heart. Even if you only think you might be targeted by some person, group, or agency, guess what? It's probably true, despite what others may think or say. There's a best-selling book by Galvin D. Becker that will make an excellent companion to The Professional Paranoid. It's called The Gift of Fear. Actually, I have that book. It explains exactly why your instincts are your best tool in determining if you have a problem. The most important thing to realize is that the problem is not how others perceive you. It's not even so much that you have an enemy, as much as it is that you must acknowledge the threat may exist. Only then can you take appropriate action. As De Becker would point out, when we perceive basic instinctual responses to events around us, all too often we simply choose to ignore them. That strange sensation of being followed or being watched is a natural instinct. And there is surely something in the real world that's causing the instinct to be triggered. The noises on your phone, the clues left in your drawers are real-world signals that your instincts are trying to point it out. Yet all too often we dismiss these impulses. With all manner of disbelief, consciously struggle to accept a suspicious stranger even as okay, while insisting to ourselves, quote, "Oh, it's nothing. I'm just being paranoid," unquote. In today's world, men and women interact with many people in an extremely rich and complex way. Despite whatever care we may take in our interactions, there are lots of ways in which we might make enemies of other people. No, that could never happen. I've never, I mean, everybody just loves me. I'm going to tell you that one of my ex-boyfriends, I guess I've had a few. One of my long-term ex-boyfriends said to me one day, I guess after we're just having a conversation, he turns to me and said, he said, people are either going to love you or hate you. He just said, with a totally straight face, I just looked at him like, where the hell did that come from? People are either going to love you or hate you. Well, okay, so you can either love me or hate me. I don't really care. It doesn't make me who I am or I'm not. So often we don't even know when we cause people to feel slighted, insulted, or angered. We may feel a sense of awkwardness in a given situation, but We may not realize the extent of the damage, especially, when you're around those malignant narcissists and all you have to do is tell them no. Like, no to a narcissist is a trigger. Oh my God, they're going to go into full-blown hating, stalking mode against you for the rest of your life. Sometimes we cannot be expected to know, for the damage may reside entirely in the head of the deranged individual. In your daily travels, you may unknowingly cut someone off on the highway. You might say or do something that someone else perceives as an insult or a threat. And when they decide to make you their enemy and elect to go to war, they automatically become your enemy by default, though you may not even know it yet. Unless you have an opportunity to salve the perceived wound. Salve the perceived wound. The problem can grow to out of proportion and represent significant danger. Well, you know what? Most targeted people have no idea that they pissed off the wrong person, or argued or disagreed with or broke up with somebody whose little weenies got hurt, like out of control, because they're very immature and sadistic and psychopathic and personality disordered and have obsessions and compulsions. For instance, that guy down the road, he drops back and follows you home and then plots how to best take advantage of knowing where you live. They don't usually send out a warning letter, or if they do so anonymously. They just start to war against you in secret. Thus, if it were not for your instincts, you might not know that they were near, watching, making plans, plotting. Your instincts, your intuition, your gut feelings, the bad vibes, they're all your best defensive tool. Be more like the animal in the woods and pay attention to your instincts. They might save you a good deal of trouble. They may even save your life. And this is why these criminals like to target your pineal glands. This is why they like to mess with your circadian rhythm and interfere with your sleep. Throughout The Gift of Fear, Dr. Becker recounts the tales of people who, for reasons they could not understand at the time, simply felt something was wrong. Indeed, it was in each case. And if they had not reacted appropriately in response to their instincts, they could have suffered great bodily harm. The clues were there, but not in plain and focused view. These people's minds absorbed the information and subconsciously processed it to put it together in a correct picture of potential danger. So the subconscious has a way of getting our attention through intuition, vibes, and the like, but it won't just walk up and give you a peck on the cheek. Stop and think about it. Whenever you get those warning signals, something could be afoot. A root word from which intuition springs is the term, which means to guard or protect. The French word tuer, T-U-E-R, takes it a step further to unalive. Hopefully you won't have to go that far to defend yourself. I can testify that intuition is a great defensive weapon. I was no different than you, most likely, when my first encounter with an unseen enemy came about. The unseen enemy. Wandering through my existence, I happily concerned myself with the minutiae of day-to-day tasks and goals. And then one day, when I was in the waiting room of an auto dealership service center reading a book on Watergate, and hoping to hear that my car was ready, a man entered the room and sat in the seat opposite me, and I glanced at him. And while the vibes were definitely not good, I let it go. There was no real cause for there to be anything seriously wrong, I thought. After some time, I decided to call my wife on the cell phone. But I didn't want to do it in public, so I rose and I left the building, walking down a maze of hallways that led to an exit at the back of the parking lot, a lot used only by employees. After stepping outside, I produced the phone, but something told me I was being watched. A second instinctive warning. I maneuvered the phone in a way that brought it up high and allowed me to cock my head enough to glance at a window situated between me and the door that I had just used. And in the window, I saw the reflection of that very same man standing there and peering through a small window in the door. He had followed me immediately after I left the waiting room, all the way down the 2 corridors to an exit for which he should have had no business. He just stood there and watched me the whole time. When I put the phone down, he vanished. I could not find him anywhere in the building, and no cars had been announced as being ready while I was outside. In retrospect, I saw how my subconscious had warned me. What happened, of course, was that my instincts were put on edge by virtue of the fact that this man fit the description of some of the Watergate burglars. He looked Cuban. That was the source of my bad vibes. The Watergate burglars were CIA, and I was at the time researching illegal activities of the CIA. My brain simply clicked without knowing it. Furthermore, I had subconsciously noted that he was always looking my way and even directly at me when I looked at him. When I left the room, I perceived a motion behind me as if someone else was standing up. My mind put all this together and deduced that there was a strong possibility I was being followed. I listened to these strange warnings enough to at least glance at the window out of the corner of my eye. Yet even as I did that, I'm not so certain that it was a conscious effort, though. I remember thinking in an instant to deliberately move the phone to allow for it. The effort paid off. Instincts worked. Trust them and damn the consequences. Don't fear being called a paranoid. That is a much better alternative to being caught off guard and attacked by an unseen opponent. So you can happily say, yeah, I'm being paranoid. I'm trusting my instincts and my intuition. That was the start of my war with the intelligence community. I would end up going head-to-head with a number of intelligence agencies, law enforcement types, and even ex-cons and civilian players over the next several years. They spied on me, but there were also attempts on my life and other attacks on my business and family. So my response was no different than if the CIA itself had become aware that then now former Soviets were spying on one of their offices, counterintelligence. I spied back, and I learned who my real enemies were, where they lived and worked, who they reported to, and why they feared me enough to call me an enemy worth of assault. That story may help you have confidence in my abilities to properly write this book. So what you're seeing here, this is my editorial commentary on this so far. It appears that he was reading a book that maybe these intel agencies didn't want people to read about. I mean, how often do people read about this stuff anyway? I have no interest in reading about Watergate. Like, it doesn't occur to me. It doesn't appeal to me. Have no interest. But who knows? Maybe in the past I read about something that triggered something. I mean, who knows? I don't know. So now here he goes. How it all began. My adventures in counter-espionage began in 1992. At that time, I was a consultant to inventors and other businesses seeking investment capital. One client, a friend of mine, showed me a document he had described in our previous conversation, supposedly a historical account of crimes committed by various people and groups since 1947 it was, in my opinion, an extremely crude and poorly written work. Filled with claims left unproven, it seemed flawed. It was obviously biased and written in a cowardly, unauthoritative manner, with no bibliography or author information given. However, as I went through the document, a couple of things astonished me. It viably tied certain people associated with the assassination of JFK to the Watergate scandal, providing specific information linking the two. It was much more detailed than any other similar report I'd ever read, and in other published accounts I've seen, the connections had always been addressed in sweeping, generic descriptions or had never been mentioned at all. If these claims were true, the document was not only important, it was a potential powder keg. I don't even know what that means, a powder keg. I guess like a bomb or something, a bombshell, I don't know. I wrote to the former intelligence agency in a position to assess its accuracy, and my contact was an author on politics that happened to owe his publisher one more book under the terms of his contract. So, if anyone could do the subject justice, I reasoned, it would be him. And unless he invited me to be the co-author, I felt no reason to be further involved. Within 3 days of my inquiry, my life began to fall apart. It became clear that I was being followed, and I took precautions which enabled me to detect several surreptitious entries into my home. While I was away, my computer was tampered with, sabotaged, and eventually stolen. My mail was intercepted, and my life put under electronic and visual surveillance at both work and home. In one incident, I was victimized by police who responded to a 911 call I made concerning prowlers on my property. Though numerous witnesses confirmed that I chased away 2 people with a toy gun, no less, the officer filed a report that mentioned nothing other than I was mental. See? They're all in on it, guys. The coppers are all in on it. Furthermore, my business was derailed by a number of means, including the sabotage of my relationships with federal agencies operating in American embassies abroad, and in my job as a consulate. I often dealt with potential investors in foreign countries who would invest in American businesses in exchange for American citizenship under the Immigration Act of 1990. I was eventually forced into bankruptcy. Relationships with friends and family were also affected adversely by the emotional stress of the situation. And despite all this, I fought fairly well against my antagonists. I was able to turn the tables on them, to follow and identify them, find where they lived, find where they worked, who their associates were, and so on. And I found ties to the CIA fronts and even to Langley, Virginia itself, which is like the military. I succeeded partially due to my alignment with a rather loosely organized underground of individuals active in their opposition to governmental abuse of power, and I met and befriended a surprisingly large number of people nationwide who had personal experiences just like mine. Through insight gained by their successes and failures, I was able to learn, quote-unquote, the trade. Honestly, guys, I don't want to learn the trade. I just want this to be done. Oh, and by the way, this cute little picture here, this is criminal mischief. I thought you'd get a kick out of that. Yeah, this is criminal mischief. The goal of this work is to help the experienced deal with forces intent on the invasion of your privacy, regardless of whether it's my favorite Bureau of Investigation, the CIA, the IRS, or just some idiot bent on causing you trouble. In presenting this material, no presumption of prior knowledge is made on the reader. For that reason, some content may seem too obvious or basic to some readers, but given that so many people who have come under this author for help have no experience upon which to build, I will start with the basics to ensure that everyone can comprehend this. Rules for the paranoid. There is only one hard and fast rule. And that is that there are no rules that you cannot break or bend to your needs. But the following may serve you well in a tight situation. Always be on the lookout for anything unusual. This can be anything from a car passing by repeatedly to changes in your own car. It might be a door left ajar that you know should be closed. Obviously, it might be regard to others, what others may do in your absence. Establish rules of procedure within your household or place of business. and be thorough before drawing conclusions. Before drawing conclusions. Well, things are so obvious here in Jackson County, Kentucky. I've got skinned, unalived animals stuffed in my mailbox and the innards scattered on my driveway. I got poopy diapers dropped at my mailbox. Poopy toilet paper draped over my gate at 12:03 a.m. by the Scarlet family. Poopynurse.com. And then, of course, you've got the ski mask. Who, in the month of May, dons a black ski mask, drives a John Deere tractor, trespassing your property, and tears out your newly installed gate on your legally owned and surveyed property? And then, of course, when you report it to the sheriff, they do nothing, arrest nobody. Nothing. Document everything. Note the dates, the times, the license plate numbers, witnesses, details, your own thoughts at the time. Keep track of who, where, what, when, and how. Keep a journal and photocopy any evidence you uncover, like fake erosion on your property. Keep originals in a very safe place, such as a safe deposit box. Use tape recorders, cameras, camcorders can be very valuable. Install security cameras if the need arises. Be able to produce a camera or record it at any given time. Consult a lawyer. Well, of course. Ask about laws in your state regarding surreptitious recordings. Be flexible and quick. Have a contingency plan and be ready to go on a moment's notice. Have more than one route to work. Take a change of clothes for disguise with you, or have sets of such clothing at your place of work, your church, etc. Be unpredictable, establish patterns, and then break them. I always, when I go into town, I usually bring a baseball cap with me and bring a pair of sunglasses. Set indicators and booby traps. You can do a variety of things and alert you to breaking and entering or tampering. Devise tests which may reveal your enemy's actions and intentions. Bait them into taking actions beneficial to you, so you may catch them red-handed with witnesses on or off video, for instance. Don't put your trust in official sources. Look for ways to ensure the loyalty of professionals you might rely on, but have no basis for absolute trust. Like getting your neighbors on Neighborhood Wars on A&E, April 11, 2023. Or having interviews with your fellow targeted individuals like David A., well, in the past, Romola D., Megs B., Viral Serb. Get yourself interviewed. Richard Moore. Lots of people out there willing to interview targeted people. Get your story out there. Be unpredictable. Establish patterns and then break them. Set indicators and booby traps. You can do a variety of things to alert you to breaking and entering or tampering, like motion sensor lights. Like you can see when they're triggered. Devise tests which reveal your enemy's actions or intentions. Bait them. Don't put your I just read that, sorry. If you must contact the police, talk to several people in different departments and let them know that you're doing this. This will keep them in check. Remember that your opponents are human, and they'll have human emotions and frailties. They're subject to human error just as you are, so sometimes they make mistakes. Make allies out of strangers. I've gotten people to provide confidential information and obtain covert aid and funding. Don't underestimate kindness. That is very, very true. Be direct. Don't be afraid to walk on into your neighbor's camp, your enemy's camp, and confront them if you feel it's appropriate. And I'm just going to add, you make sure you've got your camera rolling and your phone rolling, both at the same time. You may decide that it's best to discuss the matter openly. You never know what you might uncover. You might even be able to resolve your dispute then and there. Be unreasonable when the situation calls for it, and don't be afraid to make a fool of yourself. Go ahead, stare. Run a red light, be rude, cut in front of someone in line and start an argument. Let the secrets out. If your enemy's watching you, feed them information from time to time that keeps them feeling successful. Choose older and less harmful information and don't just hand it to them. Make them ferret it out. Don't assume that any person, thing, or event is what it seems to be. Be suspicious and verify everything. Keep your wits about you at all times. Now, this is the introduction, and I'm going to end here. It's a little late in the day. It's just after 5. I'm going to have to get my birdies to bed, and it's raining. So, once again, this is The Professional Paranoid by Michael Sweeney. I just read the introduction, the preface, and then we'll get into chapter 1, which would be identifying the enemy. The first step is to determine who your opponent is, that you may tailor your strategy and respond accordingly, okay? This is Lorraine Alternative Homesteading signing off for now. Please remember to hit the thumbs up. Helps the channel grow, get the message out there, and yes, criminal mischief.